Namadi Bukmak, Nyada Yaku, Lieutenant Colonel Joe West, Nyada Bungawa, Australian Army Nyor, Ganyara Balanyabili Yolnyor, Unuku Down South Boy, Murawari Yolno, Baparu Nyagaru. Good afternoon, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Joe West. I'm an Indigenous soldier from the Murawari people in regional New South Wales. It is an honour to be here at the 25th Garma Festival, and I thank the yothuyindifoundation for the opportunity to share part of Army's story with you. I pay my respects to the Yolnor people, especially the Gumatj clan, Yothuyindi Mariguthara, as the traditional owners of this land, and to your elders past and present and emerging. I pay my respects to all Indigenous peoples here today, and I would like to also pay my respects, especially to all soldiers, sailors and airmen who made the ultimate sacrifice for Australia. And I note that this includes old men from this country who served bravely in World War II. Jinipula and Jiminboy Yunipingu, and their kinsman Milirma Marika, who were killed in January 1943 while serving as coast watchers when HMAS Patricia Cam was sunk in the waters north of here. Jinipula and Jiminboy were uncles of the two brothers who established this famous festival. Here on their country, we in the Army salute their spirits and remember their service. I serve as a staff officer for First Nations capability at Army Headquarters, where I support the Chief of Army in our mission to prepare land power in order to enable the integrated force in competition and conflict. And my focus is on First Nations peoples and communities. You'll notice that I carry a Gulkula for Army. This represents an unbroken 80-year tradition here. Following the guidance of Yolnor senior elders like Warrant Officer Class 2 Tommy Manyarian, OAM, we aspire to be Gon Gulkula, with a hand on Gulkula, worthy to defend this country. First Nations people have a proud and unbroken history of defending country through traditional means before colonisation, during the frontier wars, and in serving Australia in every conflict we have had since Federation. From the Boer War to both wars, including Gallipoli, Vietnam, Rwanda, Afghanistan and Iraq. Indigenous peoples served equally and for the most part in the Defence Force, even at a time when the wider society saw us as second-class citizens. Indigenous soldiers were promoted on merit in the field, in some cases to officer ranks in World War I and World War II, all serving with the one skin colour, the green skin. A service life in defence is fulfilling but challenging, and we are working hard to enhance it as a place for First Nation Australians to join. It is a privilege for all of us in uniform to be present here, not just to speak about Army, but to talk about our shared story with First Nations peoples. From the Coast Watchers in the Northern Territory to the Truckers of Vietnam to Indigenous soldiers who deploy on operations today, our service has always been grounded in a deep connection to land, culture and kin. I'm proud to serve alongside both Indigenous and non-Indigenous mates, united in purpose, shaped by our service and commitment to Australia. Many present will know that I've also had the honour of serving alongside many Yolnor soldiers here from Arnhem land, where they serve a proud tradition of military service, and today we'd like to pay our respects to that history by sharing the story of the Northern Territory Special Reconnaissance Unit, presented by Indigenous soldiers through a partnership between Army, the Australian War Memorial and the University of Melbourne. But first, it is my honour to introduce Major General Matt Burr, AM, Commander of the 2nd Australian Division. General Burr enlisted in the Australian Army as an apprentice in 1986 and in 1993 graduated from the Royal Military College, Duntroon. Major General Burr currently serves as the Commander of Joint Force 646, Operation Bushfire Assist, and the Commander of the Joint Task Force 629.2, Operation COVID Assist and Operation Flood Assist. He was appointed as a member of the Order of Australia for his leadership in these operational appointments. Major General Burr deployed on Operational Challenger in 2000 as part of the United Nations Military Observer Headquarters in Timor-Leste, and in 2015, Major General Burr also deployed on Operation High Road Resolute Support as the Chief of International Engagement to Afghanistan government ministries within NATO. Sir.
Yo Mamak Joe, thank you very much, Joe. As was just described, my name is Matt Burr and I'm deeply honoured to be speaking on Gumatju lands, Yolngu country today. The Chief of Army, Lieutenant General Simon Stewart, humbly sends his apologies and respect to the Yothuyindifoundation Board, the Yothuyindi Dilak Council and distinguished guests for his absence today on the 25th anniversary of this important festival. I also wish to pay my respects to those leaders whose culture, vision, action and knowledge created the bridge between the Yolngu and the Go Ballina, Yolngu ways and Ballina ways. We're all the more richer and stronger for their legacy. As the commander of the 2nd Australian Division, I have responsibilities for domestic and community support operations throughout Australia. If there are floods, fires or any disaster on country within Australia, the women and men of the 2nd Australian Division respond to support communities during these times of disaster. So what does that mean? We, within the 2nd Division, work with communities and other organisations or government agencies to keep communities safe and strong until they can stand strong again. What you might not know is, across North and Northwestern Australia, many women and men come from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, homelands and outstations to serve within Army. These women and men often work in regional force surveillance units. Some of you may know these units. Some of you may have family who are already serving with us or have seen us in those units help during the dry and wet season times. These women and men not only work on country and see country, many of our soldiers are from country, your country, keeping country safe and keeping country strong. We can only ever move at the speed of trust. Relationships with cultural landowners and managers for country, sea country and sky country are very important to us. Army is privileged to have the support of many communities across Australia in enabling our training. We do not take this support for granted. We owe much to the trust of traditional owners and their communities. What has changed within Army during Garma's 25 years? Inside Army, we've made deliberate efforts to increase First Nations participation within Army, including the establishment of the Army Indigenous Cultural Advisory Board, which provides cultural advice to the Chief of the Army to support both our soldiers and the communities in which we serve. The Army Indigenous Cultural Advisory Board ensures cultural considerations are central to any of the decisions relating to Indigenous service and the communities. Through a number of initiatives, we have grown First Nations participation from 2% in 2009 to more than 4% of our regular forces today, achieving a participation within Army that matches the national population. Our pathway programs, like the Army Indigenous Development Program, the Indigenous Pre-Recruit Course, and the Defence Work Experience Program, provide education and upskilling and an advanced look at what service life is like. The Chief of Army appointed the first Army Elder in 2015, Uncle Roy Mundine OAM, a decorated Indigenous Vietnam veteran who oversaw a powerful service at Gallipoli in 2015 to recognise the service of Indigenous Gallipoli soldiers. That team was led by Lieutenant Colonel Joe West, and comprised of Indigenous soldiers from across Australia who conducted soil collections and spiritual callings across the Gallipoli battlefields and returned the soil to the base of the Lone Pine Tree at the Australian War Memorial. Amongst this team are two UNO Arnhem Squadron soldiers, Sergeant Norman Damaringu and Corporal Reggie Nuramadari. On behalf of the Army Elder, or our second Army Elder, Auntie Lorraine Hatton, OAM, a veteran with operational service herself, continues in this tradition, providing Indigenous leadership and direct connection to Indigenous service and communities. Army's Indigenous Elder is an honorary appointment that was established as a representative role model for Army's Indigenous, Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander personnel. The Elder conducts representational duties, community engagement, and provides advice, and is the custodian of Army's Indigenous stories. In 2024, we began exercise Greenskin, which enabled our senior enlisted leaders of Army to visit communities of veterans to hear about our soldiers from their families, exploring why they serve and the communities that support them. Major Sam White, who will talk shortly about the Northern Territory Special Reconnaissance Unit, is the officer in charge of Project Greenskin and continues to work hand in hand with elders across Australia to facilitate these connections. A key priority for the Chief of Army is to tell Army's story. And today, we are proud to be a part of telling the shared story of Army and the Yolngu people. In 1942, as World War II reached our shores, Australia faced vast northern lands to defend with too few soldiers to defend them. Here in Arnhem Land, we turned to you, the Yolngu people, and you answered the call. The Northern Territory Special Reconnaissance Unit was raised in 1941 and is one of the predecessors to today's Arnhem Squadron, part of our Regional Force Surveillance Units. In telling our shared story, Army has partnered with the Australian War Memorial and the University of Melbourne to tell the story of the Northern Territory Special Reconnaissance Unit. Major Sam White presents on this topic, and I'd like to invite Ms. Stephanie Boyle from the Australian War Memorial to say a few words about this project. Thank you.
Hello everybody. Thank you to the Gumandji clan for hosting another amazing Garma event, and congratulations on your 25th anniversary. The Northern Territory Special Reconnaissance Unit, NTSRU, represents one of the most important yet little known stories of Australia's Second World War history. A story of First Nations leadership, service and resilience. In 1942, Yolngu leaders came together in a Makarata, a peacemaking ceremony, to unite across clan groups and defend their country against invasion by the Japanese. Their courage and unity enabled the formation of the Northern Territory Special Reconnaissance Unit. In 2023, elders and descendants from the NTSRU clans signed a cultural authority document in Blue Mud Bay, and they invited the Australian War Memorial to tell the story of the unit and to provide a home for the story for all Australians to hear it. This cultural authority document says, "We have gathered here in Blue Mud Bay in Arnhem Land to talk about the tradition of defending country. Yolngu warriors inherit this tradition from their ancestors. The Miringu tradition continues unbroken. In World War II, Yolngu Miringu joined with Ngaapi, non-Aboriginal soldiers, to form the Northern Territory Special Reconnaissance Unit of the Australian Army to defend Australia from invasion. Yolngu soldiers continue this work today, comprising the majority of Arnhem Squadron of Norforce." They go on to say in the document, "This is an important story. We want to share it with other Australians." And the War Memorial accepted the request to tell this story. We are here to affirm that the War Memorial is honoured to be taking part of the NTRSU story. We are especially honoured to be working alongside Yolngu elders, soldiers and families to bring this story to national attention. Through the Maringu project, we are commissioning new artworks and recording oral histories to preserve the history of the NTSRU in their own words, in their own voices. 4 larrakitch of national significance have been commissioned and acquired for the collection. They are created by descendants of Yolngu warriors. They complement a selection of photographs identified by the Yolngu from the Donald Thompson collection, which is held by the University of Melbourne, and documents the extraordinary protagonists and ceremony undertaken to form the NTRSU. The memorial will honour the strength of Yolngu law, leadership, and the 4 principles that Rawata Majingi laid out for the unit. Ma, which is spirit, Rom, which is law, Gakal, which is excellence, and Raipiri, which is discipline. By telling this story, the memorial commits to recognising the courage, sacrifice and service of First Nations people serving in defence. Telling this story in the Yolngu fashion are both Indigenous and non-Indigenous historians and service personnel. Thank you very much.
All right, so forgive me, by training I'm a lawyer, which often means I like talking a lot and I'm not on 6-minute billables here. So I've got a timer. You'll only have to hear me talk for 18 minutes and then I promise I'll get off the stage. So my name is Sam White. I'm the Army Fellow at the Australian War Memorial. It's a position I've held for 12 months now, but this project has been going on for much longer. We've heard about the speed of trust today, a phrase that we learnt from Lieutenant Colonel Hall. The speed of trust, I think, in Arnhem land is significantly quick because of the 80 years that we've been here. But I say that with a caveat. This story from the Miracle Project of the men of the NTSRU is something that, from a Yolngu perspective, I've learnt they thought was already out there. So in many respects, we're playing catch up. 8 years ago, elders came to the Australian War Memorial asking to see the spears and the giri, or the gear, the military equipment that had been gifted to Donald Thompson in 1942. Now, I might get a quick show of hands to see if I've been successful yet or not to induce people to come to the photos. Has anyone actually come and seen the photos? Yep? Mainmuck. All right. Very mainmuck. This half, I need a promise that you'll come look at it. Okay. So there's roughly around 4,000 photos in the Donald Thompson collection. The Donald Thompson collection, as we've heard, is administered by the University of Melbourne. There's been a fair bit of time centralising the two, I think is safe to say. Some very vigorous nods on the right here. The Thompson collection spans Cape York, Arnhem Land, Central Desert. Donald Thompson was an anthropologist at the University of Melbourne who came up here in 1933. Lloyd Warner had been here slightly before him, based at Milingimbi, and he wrote a book called Black Civilization, in which he talks about the Mergen. Now, the Mergen is still debatable what that word means. It's probably the metal spears of the warriors, the Miringal, who were around Milingimbi at the time. But Donald Thompson did something that Warner hadn't done. Warner based himself at Milingimbi Mission. Thompson went out and met a man called Wongu. Now, you'll see a photo of Wongu in our collection that we have. And he lived with him in the 1930s. Now, it's quite a difficult time here in Arnhem Land, because in the 1930s, some of the men had just returned from Fanny Bay Jail, where they'd been imprisoned for spearing Japanese trepangers. So in 1942, when Donald Thompson came back up here at the behest of the Australian military, he was given an honorary rank of squadron leader. Thompson had the difficult job of convincing the men who'd been imprisoned for killing Japanese that now they were being paid to kill Japanese. Quite a difficult job, I think. One thing that we've gone through this process, though, is that obviously Thompson didn't do this alone. We've been trying to fill in the gaps in something called a narrative methodology. It's something I saw first down at the National Gallery in Australia, where you had Captain Cook's diary and you had traditional oral history to the side to allow you to actually see both sides of the story. And that's what we've been trying to do through this fellowship at the War Memorial. For the last 2 years, and I'm very fresh to the project, we've been going around the homelands, trying to find the descendants of the men who served in the NTSRU and to collect the oral history of the grandchildren. And some of them are still serving in North Force today. In fact, I've been blown away at the granddaughters and the grandsons who serve in this current unit, even down to the same position number as their grandfathers in Arnhem Squadron. It's something that I have slowly learned is the Miringal spirit here. And those 4 concepts that Steph was talking about, particularly rapery, and Tommy has taught me rapery thoroughly, discipline, both being disciplined and being disciplined, and how strong that is here. So within the Thompson collection, we have a bit of a tricky situation. We have both the photos before, in 1935, which informs the discussion we have today, and we have the photos of World War II. So we've got up here the photos of World War II. You'll see as you walk through the exhibition a portrait of Ray Walla Miljingi, a man who lived at Gutchi, which is now near Ramaginning, and he is without a doubt the main character in this story, I would say. Ray Walla is viewed as the best spearman in Arnhem Land. Thompson tells it in his notes. And when you look at his mimbo, you can tell that he definitely was a very good spearman. But he wasn't potentially the most senior. He had to convince a man called Binjia Puma, a Wangari man, and Wangu, who I was referencing before, to combine and to give the best Miringal, or the best warriors, for the Northern Territory Special Reconnaissance Unit. Hence the Makarrata. Now, the Makarrata in 1942 is the photos that we have from the Thompson collection are the only photos in Australian history of a Makarrata. The last 8 years have been spent working at the speed of trust to acquire the cultural authority to be able to show them. Now, some of these photos have been seen before in certain books, but this is the first time that the photos have been on country with the background, with the family. I would argue a proper narrative methodology. What we see at the end of it, and this is what I think makes it probably the most unique story in military history, Australian military history that I've come across, but I'm also probably biased because this is my day job. At the end of it, you have men on parade with dog tags, carrying traditional weapons, the Gulkula, carrying spears. They are also trained on machine guns, but it's very hard to resupply Arnhem Land when you have a potential Japanese landing force, right? These were men who were intended to be fighting behind enemy lines, to be able to resupply themselves, to live off the land. At the same time, when you look at the photos, have a closer look about who are the men in the shorts. We found whilst going through the photos that they were in fact Solomon Islanders who had been brought specifically across from the Solomon Island Special Forces, or the Coast Watchers, which we've heard referenced. And these men were in the Northern Territory Special Reconnaissance Unit. After a lot of time in the Melbourne archives, we finally found letters from the Deputy Prime Minister at the time authorising these 6 men by name that Thompson had requested to come and serve in the Northern Territory Special Reconnaissance Unit. It's a pretty unique story. But on top of that, not only the Yolngu and the Solomon Islanders, is a man called Kapil Gagai. Now, he is a man from Bardu Island, and I had the honour of going there 2 weeks ago to meet his family and his daughter. And in that process, we found the reason why Kapil was specifically requested to come and serve in this unit, even though he was 44, over the age limit, and he was colourblind. It's because he had been married to a Yolngu woman, and he was initiated here into Yolngu culture. This is a very unique band of brothers. Right. But that's just one story from Arnhem Land. Because whilst these senior warriors were going around this country where we are today, their younger brothers were having to serve against the Japanese that were landing. So some people may have heard of the Patricia Cam sinking. At Yirrkala, there is a commemoration there. When the boat was sunk by a Japanese plane, and the Reverend Kentish was taken back to Japanese-occupied Indonesia. Yolngu men swam out and rescued the Ballender sailors. When Milingimbi was being bombed and Jack Slade won an Air Force Cross, Yolngu warriors were running out with their galpu, with their spears, throwing spears at the Zero. Now, if you listen to the oral history, you'll definitely hear a few stories that they took out a Zero. I'm not convinced personally, but who am I to say? Maybe the hole in the plane was from a spear. But without a doubt, I wouldn't be running at a Zero with a spear. They were a phrase that I've learnt from Tommy, Marakadich, dangerous warriors, brave men. This is a history in Arnhem Land that I was very privileged to learn over the last couple of years under Project Greenskin. We've heard Project Greenskin referenced a few times, and the phrase comes from Vietnam, the idea that we all wear the one green skin. But Project Greenskin is a little bit bigger than just that. Project Greenskin is active, academically rigorous involvement with history, looking at how the army has engaged across all different cultures since 1901 and earlier. So far, we've looked at the Northern Territory Special Reconnaissance Unit, and even that has picked a few threads, the Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea. Here, Project Greenskin is also looking at the idea of the Yadaki and creating a songline, an army songline, that reflects our service here for people in uniform to be able to play. This thing works at the speed of trust. This is something that we are trying to immerse senior enlisted leadership across country, and so far we've had it in Arnhem Land, Murawari country, and in September we'll be in the Torres Strait. Next year, if the sky's the limit and I have an unlimited budget, it'll be 10, 20 times more. But I think being realistic, we need to start looking at the places that have deep history, and that's very hard in Australia, where everywhere you look, every unit you look, there is some sort of Indigenous history that Lieutenant Colonel West has talked about. I'm very excited by Greenskin. It's something that I jump out of bed every day, and I would invite anyone that has the time to come and look at the photos. They're just a small snapshot. This will be coming out with the Melbourne University Press next year. It goes to the publishers in December. Melbourne University has been very kind in meeting the wishes of the Mineral Cultural Authority for this to be a story for everyone. The book called Mineral Darwal, Warrior Stories, which will canvass the Makarrata and the NTSRU, it will canvass the Patricia Cam sinking, the Milingimbi bombing, will be free to download, open access. You can pay for a copy, but the point of this is that it's everyone's story, it's a public story, and we just want to get it out there. So with that, noting I have 4 minutes left, I might hand to Tommy and to Marley. Thank you.
Good afternoon, all. I would like to do a closing, so I'll give it to one of the younger soldiers, female, Marley. So I'll let her say to finish the event here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Private Jarbal. I'm in Private Mali Jarbal. And I have to share a story about how I joined for the No Force. It was great for me to share the story. Those two warriors, I am the close family for them. So I keep following the footsteps, how the old people travel from the west to the east, and I'm still following the footsteps. So I'm not nervous. I'm confident to share a story, standing straight. I don't cross my leg, because I want to share a story. It's with my heart. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That completes our presentation, and we would certainly welcome you at our stand, which is just down the way. Thank you very much.